Well, a lot of the guys that I coach, especially the younger ones, were totally thrilled and excited for the Odyssey movie coming out. You know, the one based on Homer's telling of the Odyssey and the Iliad. And I went and saw it recently. And of course, I thought, my goodness, there is a lot of parallels to the journey of recovery from porn. So today on Finding Traction, we talk about the movie The Odyssey and how it relates to our journey away from porn and towards a much, much better life. Welcome aboard.
Ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Now, before we get to Christopher Nolan and the Odyssey, let me just say that we have now set a time for a brand new Finding Traction group based on the 52-week video course Finding Traction. And we are going to be starting on Monday nights. The second week of August will be our first group meeting. So if you were looking for a group of guys and you were looking, to walk with a group of guys and get encouragement and connection throughout the week and some great material, we are going to be starting on Monday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. That is going to be our new time for a brand new group. So please get a hold of me right away if you're interested in a group. We've got space for maybe 7, 8 guys in all. So I've got 4 already committed. So please reach out to me. Also, a chance for you, again, a reminder to get on the Circle app. I've got like over 300 guys on there right now. And it's just a way for you to get, access to some of the resources, some of the tools that I've given free to guys. So go on Circle app. You will see the basically the login information on the show notes. And finally, let me just say that if you want to connect with me, just have a free Zoom call with me, please reach out. My email is real simple, bandofbrothers.care @gmail.com. Okay, let's get back to the movie, The Odyssey. And I know that a lot of people were really anticipating this for months. And again, you probably haven't read Homer's original, but again, this was Christopher Nolan's retake of the Greek story, The Odyssey. Now, it's not the first retake. One of my favorite movies of all times is Brother, Where Art Thou? And that is a loose retelling of the Greek tale, complete with John Goodman as Cyclops. And again, I love that movie. And let me just say, as we talk a little bit about this movie, if you're worried about me giving some, I don't know, not hidden stuff, but just telling you parts of the plot that will take away from your enjoyment, I don't think that's going to be the case. Nothing I say is going to take away from your enjoyment of the movie. In fact, because I have not read Homer's original, we listened to a 2-part podcast on The Rest is History, one of my favorite podcasts. And that really brought us up to speed with the entire telling of the story, the details of the story. And it didn't take away from our enjoyment of the movie. It actually added a lot. There were differences, of course, between the way Christopher Nolan told it and the original. But it didn't take away. In fact, it helped us understand, okay, this is where this fits in, and this is what the differences were. I know some people are going to go on Reddit and do a whole amount of arguing about different things, but I didn't find it took away from the enjoyment of the movie. Let me give you one other reason why I would recommend this movie. In the podcast from The Rest is History and the original, there were some serious references and serious sexual arousal possibilities that Nolan could have gone to in his movie retelling. For example, the god Circe's Odysseus, which is the main character, he ends up sleeping with her, apparently willingly to save his crew and secure her help for the journey. That's in the original, doesn't come out really at all in the movie. And then, of course, there's Calypso, and he's held captive on her island for 7 years, essentially her sex slave. And then he sleeps with her. He spends his day crying on the beach. And so you have all of that in the original tale. But again, I'm here to tell you none of that is in the movie. It is an essentially a clean, albeit very violent movie. I was even expecting from listening to The Rest is History a lot of vomit. One of my favorite jokes with my wife, well, it's about my wife, is my wife hates vomit. She hates it in real life. If I'm going to vomit, she's going to run away. She hates vomit in television shows. She says when there's vomit in shows, it should come with a warning before the movie even starts. And so in Homer's book, the Cyclops vomits up this great large quantity of vomit and pieces of the men he's eaten to great gross effect, apparently. Reminds me of that lard-ass story in one of my other favorite movies, Stephen King's movie, Stand By Me. But I digress there. Again, none of the vomit shows up in this movie. So if you were looking for vomit, yes, there's another reason to complain about the movies. But I want to talk today, and you might have completely different parallels. You may think I'm off my rocker, but I've been told, Vern, you got to do a podcast about this, and I agree. So here is some of my parallels from the movie. First of all, it's all about a journey. The name is Odyssey, right? And Odyssey is a long, torturous journey, and it's one man's torturous journey to return to his home, to the safety of his home and his family. He's lost. He's away from what is truly safe, what is truly meaningful. His lovely, beloved wife, Penelope. And so in this story, that is the broad meta-narrative of the story. And that is really the journey of our compulsive porn use. It's taken us away from our sense of being with our family. Whether or not we're still living in our house or not, we all probably have experienced our compulsive porn use left us feeling alone, feeling distant from those we say that we love, being isolated, even from our friends. And so the entire movie is about Odysseus trying to get back to Ithaca. His deepest longing is not just to survive, it's to return home, to return to safety. And again, so many guys who are struggling with porn, even whether they're married or not, say, I feel I have lost my sense of home. I've lost my connection. I've lost my sense of intimacy. Let's say you're married with your wife. I've lost my confidence. I've lost my ability to see clearly. I've lost my spiritual health. And in that way, recovery is not just about stopping porn or leaving it behind. Recovery, porn recovery, or all forms of recovery are about finding your way home. And so that's the broad meta-narrative of the movie. And I think most of us could relate to that idea of feeling like we've lost home. There's something deeply lost inside of us, whether or not you're still living, with your family or not. So that's the first pretty obvious connection and parallel between porn recovery and the movie, The Odyssey. The movie plays, even though the crew ends up eventually all dying, so we can't skip over that part. But the crew is a big part of the movie, and he is essentially with his crew. He cares about his crew. He's not alone, and in this journey, the crew, and you see a lot of scenes where the crew is with him. They are working together. He's not trying to get home alone. He has trusted brothers, even though at some point, they end up causing problems. You see that it's not about a personal journey home. And he essentially is living in community, living in connection, and that is an essential part of this story. There is a group community aspect, which is all about why we say over and over and over again, we can do what I can't. That's the whole idea of living in community, of doing something with a group of guys. If you're at a point where I've been rowing against the wind, against the sea, against all of these forces, I need help. Well, that's this whole idea of community. The other thing, and of course, again, why it's called the Odyssey, is all of these storms, many of them, of course, caused by Poseidon or other forces beyond his control. You see the idea that he moves forward, then he's blown sideways. And I would just say his journey is not a straight line. Our journey is not a straight line. Yes, there are setbacks. We make progress, and then storms push us backwards. I've had guys that say, you know what, I made a lot of progress, and then something happened which really set me back. It could have been a personal tragedy or the loss of a parent or something that I wasn't prepared for or didn't kind of ended up overwhelming me, and it set me back in this storm. But eventually, with time, with the support of people around me, I was able to recover from it, deal with it. And the journey didn't end when I had a setback. The journey didn't end when I had a relapse. It just meant that there was more to understand. It just meant that I was able to learn from my mistakes, learn from my setbacks. And even you could even say the storms were a part of me getting home. All right, so there you go. Recovery is not a straight line. And of course, the movie talks, and also in Brother, Where Art Thou? The Cyclops, the one-eyed monster. No sexual references here. The one-eyed monster, the Cyclops, and he represents a powerful obstacle. He keeps them captive. And I would say all of us have some sort of monster within that we have to face. We have to, stick a sharpened piece of burning wood in its eye, kind of. Okay, now I've said you a little bit of the movie, but whatever your monster is, it could be that shame, it could be that trauma, it could be that loneliness that you are not facing. I've had a lot of guys say to me, you know what, I grew up, and I've had two guys say that this week. I never saw my parents never prepared me for conflict growing up. And whenever I face conflict, I don't know what to do. Another guy said to me, you know what? I never really was trained or raised on how to deal with anxiety. And so whenever anxiety hits, I feel like I have no defenses except going to porn. And those strong feelings, those strong emotions, those are maybe our own personal cyclops in terms of that, to ask ourselves, because if you are to move forward in recovery, you are going to have to face it. You are going to have to face the very reasons why you ran to porn in the first place. Now, you might have run to porn early on and you didn't even know you were running to porn, but eventually you will realize, you know what? I was set up for this addiction. I was set up for this problematic use. And now I've got to deal with the pain that I'm trying to medicate. All right, well, let's get to the sirens. Now, if you don't know anything about the movie or anything about the story, this is where I was really nervous because the whole premise of the sirens. They're these beautiful, mostly women-like creatures that are sitting on these rocks on this island. And when sailors, sail by, they are the song, the temptation that the song represents. It is so beautiful that the sailors cannot resist but row towards those sirens. And the result is they end up being destroyed on the rocks. And so I was thinking, oh my goodness, what are they going to how are they going to present the sirens? And I hate to admit, I had a number of scenarios in my mind that I thought, well, maybe Christopher Nolan could do this or show this. None of that happened. Thank you, Christopher. None of that happened, and it was very well done throughout that. Because it was the voice of temptation. All of us recognize the voice of temptation, something that we find irresistible. And it's interesting. A couple of quotes I heard was this. The sirens did not sing a song of evil. They actually sang a song of fulfillment. They offered any sailor who went by a counterfeit version of what they truly wanted and needed. Sound familiar? And so what happens is, now this is really bringing recovery stuff in. Fortunately, Odysseus was pre-warned that he would be sailing past this island. And so what he did, and this was good recovery language, is he basically said, I am not strong enough, and my men are not strong enough to hear their song and resist. None of us are strong enough in certain moments, in certain places, to resist what can feel overpowering. Good biblical language is we're not called to fight temptation, we're called to flee it. Right? And so what did Odysseus do? He made a plan beforehand. He had his men cover their ears, put wax in their ears so they couldn't hear the song. He himself tied himself to the mast, so when his willpower ran out, he had external cords to keep him from acting out. And he instructed his rowing mates, even if I plead with you to let me go, don't do it. Don't do what I say. Don't allow me to convince you that I need this. Now, I think one of the most amazing parts of the movie was the way their song was described. And I think I've got it here. He's described it, among other things, as this. It was a delicious itch you want to scratch, but you find it under the skin and can't reach it. So the delicious itch becomes unbearable. Early on in recovery, I heard this thought, one look is too many. 1,000 is not enough. And you could probably say here, one itch is too many. 1,000 itches is not enough. And so part of it was this idea of it was a delicious itch, but you could not scratch it to the point where you could satisfy it, right? Sounds like something, guys? Absolutely. There's also another part of the song that, as he hears it, it's a song of it says, it's a song of all the promises I failed to keep. And what happens through the song is he comes to the painful truth of what he's already lost along the way. And as a result, the song ends up being a song filled with regret. So that delicious itch, that delicious promise turns into a song of painful regret. Sound familiar? That's the song of the sirens. And so I think that all of us don't, basically could say, yeah, that's exactly what happens. I have this delicious song that's being played that I can't seem to resist. And I'm going, oh, I deserve this. I want just one look, or, nobody will know, or this will make me feel better. And so again, I love the way he tells the story. It didn't fill my arousal needs, which is good. It actually talked about the sweet bitter aspect of giving in to porn. The bittersweet, the sweet bitter. I really love the way they did that. Now, in the story, he ends up going to this island of Calypso, and he's held by Calypso essentially as a slave for Calypso. And she offers him pleasure, comfort, escape, but she keeps him there. She keeps him trapped there. It is interesting, in order to do that, she uses something called the lotus plant, and it helps him forget his home. It keeps him content with staying where he's at. It gives him a false peace. And it's all of that idea that keeps him from reality, that he's staying there year after year after year and not returning home. And most of us would go, there is an aspect where we lose our desire for home. We lose our desire for change. We eat of these lotus plants and we just end up being caught in some version of suspended animation. I just had my buddy Caleb on, the therapist, and we talked about Peter Pan. I think the previous episode. And it's the whole idea of we stay trapped. We don't grow. We evade responsibilities. And so it's just a great example, not just of what you have with Calypso that keeps Odyssey on the island, but also how he ends up staying away from his journey towards health and healing and wholeness using this lotus plant that keeps him from facing the truth of what he's becoming and what he's losing. Finally, the end, you get the end of the story, and not all movies these days have good endings, but essentially at the very end, you do have, it is a good ending, guys. You do have his return to Penelope, and he ends up, finding out through great loss and finally having restored what was lost. He ends up in a restored relationship. We won't go into the fact that he slept around. Some of the more Greek scholars would say, well, these were gods, wasn't the same, or you got to understand the Greek culture is not the same way we would view it these days. But leaving that aside, he ends up being restored to relationship, being restored to being present with Penelope. He rebuilds trust with her. He rebuilds that intimacy. He ends up taking control of his house in the best version, gets rid of all of the suitors that have sought to bring, division and destroy his home. And even in the end, you see his restored relationship. Restored. It's essentially his son had never met him, Telemachus, but he ends up coming into a full relationship with him. And his son, Telemachus, who really is an immature child with not really man-like qualities, he ends up coming into his own and assuming the throne at the very end. In one sense, you could say, ensuring the legacy of of Odysseus. And in one sense, not only has he restored his marriage, but his children are becoming what they were meant to be, which is what I think we all hope for, right? All right. Well, that's my take on it. I didn't get into the controversies around casting. I didn't get into all sorts of other stuff. I just want to recommend the movie. And if nothing else, hopefully it can be an encouragement to you. It can fill you with courage towards your odyssey, towards health and healing in this area. We'll see you next time.